the idea of these manifestation events, right? That Joshua refers to as emotional triggers, things that make you have a negative emotion to them, and either start to have some sort of irrational fear around it, and then it starts to take over your life, and you start to let that outside circumstance dictate what you're doing and how you're feeling. It's I'd say the last 3 or 4 weeks for me has been wildly intense, and almost comical in terms of the downward spiral of sort of, I don't even know if they're tests or they're triggers, but the manifestation event itself, just being able to understand that emotional trigger is something. It is not a reality you have to live with. It is a message, or it's an indication from the system, from the universe, that you have a limiting belief you have to deal with. And if you do deal with it, then your perspective will be able to change. And if you change your perspective, then you change how you feel about the situation. And hopefully, I think for me, that's the interesting part, right? It's like, I want to change the situation versus change my perspective on it. I want to make that outside circumstance fold up and go away. At the same time, I'm trying to get a new perspective. It's like, you're the creator and you're the victim. In the last call, I think Julia or somebody asked that question and said that, at the same time, I'm the creator of my reality, and I'm also the victim of my reality. Both roles are playing out at the same time. I like I said, all your emails and your thoughts have been really, really helpful on that. It's such an overwhelming concept to try to understand that everything that you're creating, all of this for you, for your highest good, and then just put a period after that. But you don't feel that way at first. You feel like the victim. Why is this always me? I can't believe it's happening again. Whatever that tone may be. So I've really had to lean into it in a big way.
It does feel very intense, because the illusion, if you want to call it that, is very powerful. And some context around that, from what I understand, is that as our inner selves or our non-physical selves, we choose to come here and explore and discover and learn things which are not available in the non-physical world, such as fear and lack. So we come here to more fully understand ourselves. This is something I want to ask Joshua about, really, is, as you know, I'm fascinated by the Big Bang. I will get back to your specifics in a minute, by the way. I know I've just taken off to the beginning of time.
No, let's go.
We know it, but
let it go.
So I'm fascinated by the Big Bang, as you know, and also by the fact that the universe is expanding and appears to be infinite, and it's infinitely expanding. I'm also fascinated by our traditional creation myth here in New Zealand, the Maori creation myth of Rangi and Papa, which is, to me, a kind of a metaphoric version of the Big Bang. But Joshua basically says that Source decided one day, in a world of no time, that it would be cool to expand and to experience things that are not available in the non-physical. And hence, we find ourselves with a physical world in which we can actually go and experience things not available in the universe or source or whatever. So I kind of see that whole thing as the same thing, the Joshua explanation of Source creating the non-physical, the Big Bang, and the Maori creation myth. To me, they always kind of just ran together as the same story. So we come here to do this, but if the illusion was not powerful, then it wouldn't work, right? We would just, stick our head up and say, this feels like crap today. Pull the curtain aside. Yeah, okay. Good one, didn't work. You're not going to fool me that easily. But it has to be so compelling that the illusion actually seems real and visceral and physical, and indeed it is physical when you're here. So that's why it seems so strong. And I was thinking about it walking up through, the track this morning early, and if you and I, what we used to use the Christian analogy, where after we're no longer here, we're sitting up on our glass bottom clouds, playing our harps, looking down at a rerun of our lives. And you and I be sitting there looking at how freaked out you were or I were with certain things that happened that we didn't like. And we would say, man, do you remember how freaked out you were when that thing happened? That seemed like just about a showstopper. And then, we and I would think, yeah, we did take that one pretty seriously. That really, we did think we'd hit the wall at that point. And look at us now, haha, sort of a thing. But I mean, you're moving with what you're saying to what I think is a very high level concept, because the entry level to the law of attraction is the stuff I see often on Reddit, and a young friend of mine's been saying is like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this sort of work at the moment, but I will try the law of attraction soon. I think I don't want to do it quite yet because something else seems right for me, but I've tried law of attraction and it didn't work. And I said to him, well, if it is indeed a universal law, then it's not like something you can turn on or off. It's like gravity. It's there whether you understand it or not, whether you understand how to create flight and apparently defy gravity, not really, but seeming to, whether you understand gravity or electricity or anything else that's invisible that we harness, law of attraction is there. So it's not like you can turn it on and off. You're doing it anyway. It's just that, would you rather be doing it with a degree of consciousness or not? So that's the entry level to law of attraction, right? Then the next thing is you learn a bunch of tricks and tools and, ninja mind tricks and your spiritual toolkit and all that kind of stuff. And that includes like processing manifestation events and limiting beliefs. And what we're now discovering with the latest round of work from the Ascension experience is that's all well and good, but many of us are doing it in order to try and control conditions. If I forgive everyone, love everyone, detach from this, grateful for that, blah, blah. If I can let all that go, then I will get what I want, right? So we're using all of those tricks and tools and things to control conditions, to remove something in our current reality that we think is wrong. Now, that's the really hard part. And so what Joshua was saying in the beginning of forgiveness is, well, the beginning of forgiveness is clearly forgiving, but the ultimate position of forgiveness really is gratitude, where you not only forgive a person for wronging you in some way, for example, but you actually are grateful to them because you understand the part that you desired them to play in your life. So that was a bit of a mind thingamajig for a lot of people. Gratitude, I have to be grateful as well, and I have to be genuinely grateful. But not only that, I can't approach it with like, okay, I'm going to be grateful to this person who transgressed me. I'm going to do that today, because that too is trying to control conditions. What they're really saying is, no, you've actually got to get to a much higher perspective, which is what you are now alluding to. And that perspective is, oh, well, I am the creator of it all. It is all perfect. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing to fear. And then the gratitude would just flow naturally from there. It's not something you have to even think about, because you would just look and say, oh yeah, there's so-and-so. And I used to think that they wronged me in this way, but actually, as it turns out, that was all part of my plan. It was my idea, my creation. They cooperated with me, and I got to this point. So I'm very grateful for that person for putting themselves out and doing this stuff for me to help me get where I want to go. So you are now taking this massive step, which Joshua is asking us to take currently, which is like, all right, so you've done all this work, you've done all the forms, and you've been to the boot camp, blah, blah, blah. And so now what you have to do is to actually simply do a little mind shift. You are the creator of it all. It really is all perfect. There is nothing to fear, so therefore there's nothing you need to change. And kind of, I guess it's to just start to roll on a much higher vibration, at which point you won't be needing to explore fear and lack, and things will unfold perfectly for you, because there can't be anything wrong. So that's how I see this massive journey that we're on. However, you have decided to do it in a pretty heavy duty kind of a way, if I may say so.
So it's interesting too. So I love this whole concept of forgiveness, and I've actually, and I think you and I have talked about this. We've been able to reach out to people that maybe we didn't have the best relationship, forgive them. I've really embraced that, and I enjoyed that. So what did I do for myself, my inner self do? These manifestation events that have occurred are not through individuals. It's the government, the federal government through taxes, the state government through taxes. It's a car that broke. There is no human being to forgive or give gratitude for. I'm like, so now it's like the idea is acceptance, right? And so one of the things that I'm contemplating is surrender versus just giving up and saying, the hell with everything. Like, I don't care anymore. Like, that's giving up. Accepting or surrender.
With the forgiveness, there is the forgiveness of one's self and also one's inner self, right?
That's interesting, because I kind of think, like, I like to push people's buttons in a fun way. I like to see, like, I like to have a fun time, right? And I don't mean push people's buttons in a negative way. Like, if we're going to have some fun and we're going to do some things, like, understanding people and having fun can be enjoyable when done, right, not trying to make people feel obviously awkward or bad. I kind of feel like that's what I'm doing to myself. Like, like my mother on her deathbed was like, you've always been that problem child. And I took that as like a compliment, because I just didn't follow the rules.
We call that being an explorer, right? And
right.
I remember the first time I heard the concept of, think about the things that you were criticized for most when you were younger, and you'll probably find that in there are your superpowers. When I first said that, I thought, well, that's pretty unlikely, but I quickly realized it was true when I started looking. So anyway, you were saying before I interrupted.
Oh, that was, you're right. My mother had said to me, she's like, you've always thought, she's like, you've had a sixth sense of humor. You've always thought things were funny that no one else did. It kind of clicked on me that this is why I'm doing this to myself. Like, I actually think this is funny.
Yeah. Well, that was taking the higher perspective. You just didn't know it.
Right.
In those words, you knew it intuitively.
When I was talking with Jessica and Gary, what I really realized is this next set of manifestation events is I'm looking inward for my limiting beliefs. It's no longer around financial prosperity or that someone's going to take something from me. It's literally that I'm at the point now where you have to trust. You have to trust the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. So just hold that thought for a minute. You were saying something before when I said about forgiveness. You said something about, I can't remember the words you used, but the sense I had was, I kind of feel like I should just give up. Like,
so we talk about accepting, right? So we talked about accepting or surrendering, right? In a positive way.
Surrendering, right?
Right. But then there's also that, like, on a fine line, like a razor's edge, is just giving up and being like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm tired because these things keep occurring and they're sucking the soul, my life out of me.
What would giving up look like? What is that?
Well, that's a great question. And that's what I almost want to ask, how do you know the difference if you're just surrendering and accepting versus giving up and just chucking it and saying, I don't care anymore. I'm done with this. Like, I'm done with, these things keep happening and I'm tired and I don't want to put any more energy into them. And like, I just, like, you literally, I guess giving up is like, is ignoring. Giving up, I'm guessing, would be ignoring any of it, not accepting it, and just ignoring it and being like, I don't even care, whatever happens. And then you let these manifestation events roll and gain momentum, and you just give up. You just don't care anymore.
So
you don't care in a positive way, right? You don't care in like oh my God, my perspective has changed.
It depends whether it's done from, it depends if it's done from fear and apathy, or whether it's done from a position of love and, I wouldn't say power, but a position of love and conscious choice. So, you and I've often talked about how, and Gary's had the same experience, that you discover the secret, or Abraham, or whatever, your entree into the law of attraction, and you think, oh, awesome, I'll get my millions of dollars back. Great, this awesome tool. And that's what I talk about with some of the people on the Reddit LOA thread. It's like, I'm going to manifest $300,000, or I'm going to manifest this person in my life. Like, I'm going to pull out this awesome superpower or ninja mind trick that I've learned. I'm going to fire it off down here, and this thing's going to come, and I'm going to feel good. So that's kind of the entry level proposition, which once you've done a bit of work on it, you think, okay, right, we all started there, and now we can laugh at ourselves because it's pretty hilarious. So, and then you move along, and then you think, okay, well, I possibly could manifest all those things, but what do I really want? Because you suddenly realize something about a higher purpose or the whole point of it. And you and I realized that in the past, our wealthier selves, we weren't actually ever happy with any of that. And there was issues and conflicts and living a life, not a false persona, you might say, like exploring who you're not. And so I did that extensively and developed this whole persona, which I've now ditched, partly by choice and partly by circumstance, choice at a different level, and you're the same, really. So and then the next iteration of that same mistake, if you like, or that same erroneous path, you might say, or that same exploration that is going to be a bit of a dead end exploration because it doesn't go anywhere, is that, oh, okay, right, well, I'm going to use the manifestation event processing form, the whole process, identifying limiting beliefs, blah, blah. I'm going to use these things, the boot camp and all these things I've learned, accepting and allowing and forgiving and blah, blah. I'm going to use all those because then I will remove the thing in my life that I don't like and I'll get some more of the thing in my life that I want. And in this case, it's around money and probably around freedom as well. So we without realizing it, we kind of ascended to a higher level, but started doing the same thing with far more sophisticated tools. And now you're saying, well, I now see that I want to take this other step. So I'm going to stop talking for a second because I'm going to find the sentence that I recorded from a recent Joshua Live 353, and I put it in Evernote. And basically Joshua is saying, right, you've done all of that, and there's one further thing that you really have come here for, and it is, da, da, da. So anyway, feel free to talk while I find this sentence.
So, so what I've been thinking these last months, and like I said, your emails have been very helpful, is trying to understand the difference between surrender, accepting, and giving up. And what I've come to, because at first you're exhausted, right? When you let that irrational fear, because it's irrational, overtake your emotions, right? Get you down. What I've come to understand is that the difference between accepting / surrendering and just giving up is still looking at the situation without changing your perspective. When accepting and surrendering is looking at the situation by changing your perspective, that everything is perfect and this is all good.
Right, so one is the victim and one is the creator, right? So kind of giving up and rolling over is the apathy thing I called it before. I just realized as victim, whereas like, okay, but it's a close by to that. Is like you realize you've been banging your head against a brick wall for long enough. It's like, okay, that never works, so I'm going to do something different, consciously and deliberately. It's not like, okay, I just give up. It's not that I give up. It's like, oh, okay, pivot. Here we go. We're going over here.
I like what you just said too. That and it helps, gives clarity as well. Giving up, rolling over is the victim. That's exactly what it is. It's that, and what this has made me try to understand is how to accept it. And that Joshua number 353 you're about to reference, to me, I've listened to it now almost a half a dozen times. It is one of the most powerful. That 352, 349, those episodes to me have been life-changing episodes for me in terms of clarity on the work. What I think I want is one answer, and that answer, once I write it down, solves all my problems, right? Or all my perceived problems. That doesn't exist, right? So that's the
well, it does actually. It does, but it's not what we think it is.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah. Well said.
So I'll explain what I just said in a minute. So I found this quote, and I've got the killer sentence here, the absolute. Yeah. So 352, the introduction to that was staggering for me. I listened to it probably 10 times and transcribed it and chopped it up and shared it, as you saw. And then I've been listening to 353. I didn't hear it live because I was away on summer vacation in Queenstown, which is an alpine lake, drinking far more wine than I should have. Anyway, so and by the way, you don't drink alcohol. Did you used to drink alcohol years ago?
I drink. I just don't drink a lot. I
Right,
just,
okay. Because
I
I
do
noticed
like
when I was
wine.
drinking too much, like over that New Year's, Christmas period with friends and family, like I feel it lowers my vibration, and that it reduces my ability to see things the way I would like to see them, and it allows a lot more negative or victim sort of
Rational
thinking to
fear.
come in. It seems to do something to my psyche,
It
my
does. There's no
impressions.
question. It
Yeah,
increases the impression of irrational fear. There's no
right.
question that it does something in my mind as well, which is why I pretty much I stop myself at one or two
Yeah,
drinks. Like I honestly, if I have more, I wake up like almost with anxiety.
yeah. So I'll come back to the main point in a minute, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, so like I have a drink or two and it feels really good. So I have another one, and then it's from there onwards. You've reached the peak and it's kind of all downhill. And overnight and the next morning, it's you pay for it in a way, whatever that is, with less sleep or funny dreams or whatever. But Krista Zimmerman, who's doing this work with us, we've been talking with her about taking her courses online, and she's got this amazing course called Drinking Without Fear, which will be released soon. And she started drinking at age 13 and became serious alcoholic. She's an extraordinary young woman. And she then went through eventually, I think she maybe is like, I don't know, 35, 40 or something now. She's got a daughter of 12 and a little baby boy. And so she's overcome a lot of issues in her life, including depression, insomnia, and mental health diagnoses. And she's done it all with her own method and her own work. She went through the Alcoholics Anonymous thing, and then she decided, I don't know how she worked it out so young, she kind of worked it out by herself that, oh, this is good, but it's fear-based, and I would rather have something that's more positive and not fear-based. And so she basically said, right, I'm going to find a way that alcohol can be in my life. If I want to have a glass of wine once a week, I'll have one glass, and I'll have that once a week, and that's it. And she has actually managed to do that. It's extraordinary. Whereas the AA model is like, you're an alcoholic, you have a drink and you're down the slippery slope and it's all over, baby. So anyway, that reading her material for me, and I can't wait to see her other courses, has been really quite mind expanding. And it was all about being super conscious with it. But then I thought, well, I don't actually feel that good psychically or spiritually. Like it doesn't really mix. Anyway, so Joshua says, we want to start by saying the life you're living now is perfect for you. It is that perfect. Hold on. Oh, it's unique to you. It's the life you have carefully crafted for the non-physical. I haven't checked the transcript on all of this, from the non-physical, and you and your inner self together as a team have gone into this life where your inner self is guiding you every step of the way towards everything you intended to experience in this lifetime. So I guess that's one of the first things, is that whatever we're experiencing was our intention to experience in this lifetime. So it is part of a grander plan. Now here we get to it. And you have experienced almost all of that which you intended to experience. So what they're saying is that people who are doing this work have come a long way and are getting towards the end of their explorations. And yet there is one thing more that you really want to experience, and that is, could I come closer and closer and closer to this perception of the true self that I am while living in physical reality? And this is why you find yourself here.
I love that. That was what, 353 or 352?
3.
35, yeah. Episode, the Joshua Live episode 353.
Yeah.
I was actually, so for me, and it's so funny you say that, that almost lines up perfectly with where I believe these series of manifestation events have occurred for me.
That's why I read
Because
it. That's why I put it in like 16-point font in red and Evernote in bold, because I thought Jerry's going to be interested in this one. I know you've been reading it. And they also said that they said primarily the reason you found all of this, the bootcamp ascension experience, the books, the podcast, blah, blah, primarily the reason you found it is to solve a problem. And that problem is your lack of clarity. And we've been meditating on clarity weekly for, several years. And so here we are saying, okay, you don't have clarity. And so you're finding the solution to that lack of clarity, but not really perceiving that this is what it is, because you believe by doing the work and changing your perception, working on your limiting beliefs and pushing past your fear to act on inspiration, you believe that you will get everything you want, or everything you think you want, and everything you think you lack. So what they're saying is you're using those tools to get what you think you lack and to address your fears. But this isn't really the case at all, because the perception of lack is based on the illusion. So the clarity is to understand that whatever angst or pain we might be going through, they're saying it is the illusion. And if you can understand that from a higher perspective, then it really holds no more fear for us. However, you've decided to explore this in a pretty deep and meaningful way.
So it's interesting, right? Because then this, and Joshua touches upon this briefly in his last live episode, then do we actually have any desires? If our desires, right, if you take, let's take 10 steps back, right, in the law of attraction or these universal laws, and we look at Abraham and we've launched those rockets of desires into the vortex, right, whatever that, and we're matching our vibrational need for them. Based upon the last week of the ascension, like, if it's not involved with our higher purpose or our highest good or our pre-birth intentions, then it's not really a desire we want.
Yeah, so that's true, because it gets to the point, and they have talked about this as well, that and eventually all the things you thought you wanted, you don't really care about anymore. And I was thinking about that before I talked to you this morning. Like, we're obviously responding to the same material in the same way. And I think I've told you that one of my favorite musicians is this guy called Mclaughlin, who's he's a jazz guitarist. He played with Miles Davis way back in the day, and he's been at the forefront of fusion jazz or electronic jazz since the 1970s. And he went through a whole spiritual phase. I think he's still a very spiritual man. He's just turned 80, I think. Lives in Monaco. He's English by birth, lived in America a lot, I think, played with all the top, best jazz musicians of the era in the last 50, 60 years. Anyway, and he went through the spiritual phase with Sri Chinmoy and all that kind of stuff. And he took on a spiritual name, and his name became Mahavishnu Mclaughlin. And other famous people like Carlos Santana did a similar thing, and his name was Devadeep Carlos Santana, and they did some amazing, beautiful work together. Anyway, and he created this band called the Mahavishnu Orchestra, which was like this incredible jazz rock band. But I've always found the music spiritually uplifting. But at the beginning of one of his tracks, and he believes in an external higher power, I think, whereas I don't, but the sentiment is there. He says something like, "What need have I of this? What need have I of that? I am sitting at the feet of my maker. All is bliss, all is bliss." And I thought, there's a guy that's worth quite a lot of money, living the life of Monaco. His royalties must be, a lovely looking number. And you just, you see him mainly in barefoot jeans, t-shirt, and that's him all over. What need have I of this? What need have I of that? Because essentially what he's saying is, well, I've discovered that stuff doesn't really matter, and I am living as a spiritual being, and therefore those things don't matter anymore. He does have a good collection of guitars, but I excuse that.
It does cause you to pause on understanding the difference between what you want and what you think you might want. And you really will never know the difference until you begin to accept everything as perfect, or surrender to the moment, to the present moment as perfect. For you to surrender to the present moment as perfect, and to continue to do that throughout your day, whatever that may take, then everything you think you desire, everything doesn't exist, and because you have everything in that moment, right? Joshua says this too, is that where I sometimes get caught up is I may have surrendered to this moment. We're having this great conversation, but I'm thinking about tomorrow. I'm thinking about next month. I'm thinking about, so for me, this, you're talking about trust. I've gotten $100,000 in bills that just showed up. I put 200 grand that was in cash into crypto that's now worth 100, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not selling it. I have
Yeah.
cash needs. Now I could sell other things and do other things, right? But at this moment, I'm just taking a deep breath. And then the contract, which I have going on, which is very lucrative, that's on pause. And I just was like, I'm rolling with it, going, okay. Not giving up, rolling over, being the victim, going, I can't wait to see how this unravels. Like, this is comical. Like, I said to Gary, I literally pulled up and I showed him I have gotten, like, literally, there must have been 17 letters from IRS and state going back 7 years, and stuff just showed up. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's just, and I'm like, I know. And then you look at myself, you look at what my mom said to me. You were that kid that always you thought things were funny that no one else did. And I'm going, oh my God, I did this to myself because I'm that person.
Yeah.
I love to go, oh yeah, you think you've learned something? How are you dealing with this? Because there's no one to forgive but myself. There's no one to go after. Literally, you can't make a phone call. Do you realize in the United States, you can't even get the IRS on the phone? It doesn't, there is nobody working there. My accountant will tell you, I've spent the last 3 weeks on the phone for 3 and 4 hours at a time that he charges me for to try to get on so I've literally gotten myself into a situation where I can't even call somebody to explain myself.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you just have to be like, okay. And could it all be one big mistake? Absolutely, it could be. Could it all be gone away with one? I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. So for me, you couldn't get a bigger, I mean, we bought a car for my daughter she just turned 16, has a license, and it needed a few $1,000s worth of work. Like, we just bought it. They give you that 15-day non-lemon thing. We bought her an Audi Q3, right? A little older one. And it's like a couple $1,000s worth of work that needed to go into it. I'm starting laughing. I'm like, it's all cash. Everybody needs cash. And I'm like, this is hysterical. Like, how could you literally make up all of these things at once? My daughter's sorority doubled their price. It's another few $1,000s cash. Her college was needed. That was, tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, it's literally comical. I couldn't if I was to sit down and write down how many bills could you get in a week, I couldn't have come up with this.
Yeah, it's not a world record you wanted.
No. But it is super interesting what I'm seeing and then, by the way, a massive amount of income to then say, oh wait, we're gonna hit pause on that.
That could have. When you told me that, I was speechless. It's like, that really is like completely crazy, over the top manifestation event.
And then the money that could have easily taken care of everything is now half as much.
Yeah, the crypto, yeah. So even the dogs laughing, right? I can hear the dogs. The dogs with you on this. It's like, man, can't believe
giggling.
Yeah,
he's giggling. So for me, if this is, you couldn't get my attention any more profoundly than you have it now.
Right. So, because you and I have been through that whole process too. It's like, we didn't take notice. So we kept upping the ante on the severity of the manifestation events until finally we bludgeoned ourselves into submission. It's like, okay, right, tell me something I need to know, and I'll think about doing things differently. And so I did wonder if it's kind of the last phase of that particular thing. I'm going to read a tiny bit more of that Joshua Live 353, and it's this. But the beginning part is not about you, but it is about quite a few people who we've heard ask questions in the Joshua Lives. It's about people who are impatient, like, well, I've done this and I've done that and nothing's changed, like blah blah blah, and we're all very impatient. So, but the next part about a simple change is really the key message here. So Joshua says, we say a lot of you are a bit impatient. You want it all now. This has been your habit of controlling conditions. The quicker I can control the conditions, the better I feel. This uneasy feeling of resistance is causing me to act on urges to change my conditions very quickly. So what they're saying is that I feel bad and I don't want to feel bad. So therefore I'm going to grab these tools, which I've come across, yippee, and I'll apply these tools and I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll feel good. So, which is all about, I don't like my current circumstances. I don't accept they're perfect. I'm going to use these tools to change everything. So, and I think we've all been there to some extent. And we've had some people say, this isn't working and, you know, I need it to work now. Blah, blah. Right. Anyway, so Joshua says, but what if that wasn't even necessary? What if it was simply changing your perception of yourself? And that is it. Simply changing your perception of yourself, having nothing to do with the conditions whatsoever. Just thinking of yourself in higher terms, thinking of yourself in ways that other people wouldn't really even consider. Giving up the control that's part of your daily life, giving up your preferences, even your manly desires, knowing that all those things are based in lack. And then perceiving yourself as not needing anything, that you're not here to serve yourself, that you're here to live in alignment and faith that you have everything you need, like everything you need right now, and that all you need to do is flow the consciousness of source, the brilliance of source, the creativity of source, the love of source, the compassion of source through you to everyone else, everything else in your entire reality. Well, you start to do that, you can only do that from this higher perspective. This is the way your vibration rises. When you see yourself as you truly are from this high perspective, you raise your vibration, because you cannot have a limited vibration when you see yourself as the creator of your reality. So I think that's where you and I are at right now.
And for me, I think and I love the idea, what you said, the way you started out that quote, right? It's changing the perception of yourself. It goes back to that whole, even the idea of surrender, right? Versus surrender and accepting versus becoming the victim. It's a perception of yourself. That's where in the past, you know, I would have crawled up in a ball and not wanted to get out of bed. That's
a big thing I've noticed, that you said that, because you've deliberately and consciously chosen to react to your current situation from a position of not going into fear and anger and fighting and all that kind of stuff. So you've actually taken the other fork in that road, which is a huge thing. There's another little bit down the bottom here. Limited vibration only occurs when you see yourself as the victim to reality. And since you're moving from being a victim to the creator, everything is flowing perfectly to you. Everything you need at all times is always flowing to you. And this is why you lack nothing. Quite hard to accept. I understand that it is all true. I do get it. And they say, get it intellectually and then apply it. Like, start with the intellectual acceptance and go from there. So, and they've also been talking maybe in 352 about source energy flowing through you. So there's a number of themes that have emerged in the last couple of weeks. And they did stay with the ascension experience that will change you more than anything and raise your vibration more than anything, any other period in your life. And it may feel like a bumpy ride, but I do believe this is what is happening right now.
Yeah, I will, you know, and I think you and I have said this, and I was just reading through the email you sent me from 352, right? You know, once again, it starts out with, so if one perceives himself as a victim, then they'll track that reality that reinforces the perception of them as a victim. I'm like, for me, like, that's really powerful, right? It's like, okay, I'm doing this. These are gifts. I need to unpack these gifts and see what they're offering me. And I think what I've done in the past is I've ridden over them with a steamroller. I don't want to open them. I don't care. Get out of the way. I don't want this, right? Just go away, go away. Now I'm going to unpack them and open them up and say, okay, let's see what happens. Let's see where this goes. And trust in the fact that I've created this for my highest good, that if there is going to be some huge benefit, right, for me, what I don't know, but it will be there. And the trust that it'll be there. For me, this is that, you know, we all can say, hey, the universe is for you, right? Things are happening for me, not to me. We can all say that. And just to reiterate what you just said a minute ago, knowing that and then becoming that are just, that's that next step that I feel like we're going through. You and I could talk about this all day long, but we're starting to experience it. So how are we being it? How are we being what we're talking about?
It's the being. So when you get to the point where you're at, you could say, I just give up, which is the victim rollover, submit, blah, blah, whatever words you want to call it. And two other ways, well, we know we don't want to do that, right? And that's never been the way you did it in the past. You always come out fighting, and you take it, you rush forward, and you make things happen with effort and struggle and energy and anger or whatever it might be. So you know that it's not you to roll over and just say, oh, I'm screwed, that's the end of this. So what I'm saying is that this law of attraction approach to these things is not about giving up and just like being fatalistic. It's not about that at all. It is about taking action. But the difference is, in the past, what you and I did was we oh, you muted us. Okay, that's all right. Yep.
No, I was actually just answering my wife.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I realized that was happening. So in the past, you and I would have reacted to something with anger or fear and effort and struggle, right? So that was the way we reacted to it. So we're not saying don't react to it. What we're actually saying is, well, we're still going to do something. It's not like we're going to give up, and it's not like we're going to, allow our situation to become something we don't want. What we're going to do is actually, instead of acting in fear, we're going to actually allow inspiration to come. So in other words, we're still going to do something. Like you might think, well, where else would I be able to get a contract like this right now? Or where else, would I find, a quick $100,000, or, what, like, you could dump all your obligations, but you probably don't want to do that. And your family probably wouldn't be that happy either. So in other words, instead of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Blah, 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 fight, get angry, blah, blah. It's like, okay, what about some inspiration? What are some ideas that come to me? And like Joshua says, well, you don't have to do the whole thing. You can just, like, not in your case, but if you were thinking about looking for a house or going on a holiday or whatever, you could just start by doing some Googling, right? Just start Googling something and see what comes up. And then you go from there. So you take the first step and act on inspiration. So my point is that it's not about capitulating or giving up or rolling over or being the victim. But it's just that instead of taking action out of fear and anger and control, we're trying to say, right, I will take action, I will push past fears, but I'm going to do it from a place of inspiration, so that the steps I take from here are in alignment with where I'm actually wanting to be and who I am. Because you and I don't want to end up just creating the same circumstance that we had 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or whenever it might have been. You're muted still.
Well, you said that too, and what came to me, and I think last week as well in the Ascension program, there was the lesson that we were the workbook lesson that we were given was all about asking for guidance, right? And for me, what just came to me now when you were talking was that for me, I'm gonna take action from a place of inspiration versus desperation, right? It's that, that's that thing that you just, what you said to me, that's what clicked me. And like, you're right. It's like, how do you ask for that inspiration? If nothing comes that day, then the inspiration is to do nothing. Like, go about your day, see it as perfect, right? I think in the past, I would be angry that I hadn't got, like, what's the answer? Like, I want talk about it being impatient, right? It all sort of flows together. So I like that, and I just took that note. So taking action from a place of inspiration versus desperation. And
so another thing that you just reminded me of that you and I might have done in the past is not only try to fix this thing in various ways, but we would probably look for the total solution. Like, I need the whole package, which is like, I want to nail this whole thing now. But what I've noticed, and you may have noticed as well, and perhaps other people, is that the most extraordinary things in my life, whether it was meeting Trace, for example, or whether it was making a truckload of money or whatever, or becoming a competitive runner in high school, whatever those interesting moments in your life, they never happened where you saw the totality of the thing. What actually happened was I did this thing, and that led to this thing, and that led to this thing. And it's only when you look back and you think, holy cow, that was amazing. I never would have actually guessed that it was going to unfold in that way, because I started doing this and that led to this, and that was unexpected. And then look where I ended up. So when Joshua says in this recent, and I think it's in this 3x3, when they say, you take the first step on inspiration, you don't actually know where it's going to lead. It's a breadcrumb trail. So to take the breadcrumb and go to the next one, you have no idea where it's going to lead. And furthermore, you don't even want to. And this is the whole fun and the joy of the thing. So one of the challenges that you face in a very real and visceral and cutting sort of circumstance is, well, not only are you not going to try and nail the whole thing in one go, but you actually need to accept inspiration and take just the one step at a time, knowing that it is actually going to lead you where you want to get to, as has everything else good that's ever happened to you in your life as well. Like it was never a straight line trajectory, right? And you see it all the time, like people start a new business and they have a business plan. They get out there, they test it in the market, and the market, like a pinball, it's like bang, bang, bang. It's like, oh, okay, we're pivoting because we thought they wanted this, but they should want something slightly different. And after 1 or 2 or 3 years of a new business, generally doesn't look anything like the original idea. And in other words, it's the same thing, right? You start off, you take inspiration, you take a step, and then you don't know what the next one is, and it comes along. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't see that, but that's good. Let's take this step. So what I'm saying to you is that it's not only a matter of seeing yourself as the creator rather than the victim. It's also a matter of being able to receive inspiration, take one step at a time, not knowing what is ahead, but trusting that the right thing is ahead.
It's so funny you say that. So I've gone back. I was inspired, I think last week or early this week, to go back and list all of the, I call them miracles, all the miracles, just exactly what you just described.
Wow.
In my life, things that happened that I did not plan, that gave me something fantastic or led to something. And I went through and unjournaled all of these miracles to remind myself, and I was inspired to do it, that don't worry. Like I didn't plan, like I didn't get into college the first time, the school I wanted to go to. Somehow somebody called, I got in, and then I didn't have the money to do it. And then I played lacrosse in college. I got a caddy scholarship, a golf scholarship.
Wow.
To pay for me to go. And you look at all these different things. I didn't plan to move to Arizona. I did move here, and it was an amazing opportunity. All these things that I didn't plan, and I listed hundreds of them, but I didn't plan and struggle and effort to do it. They just happened.
Yeah. So we were doing it, but didn't realize, right? And I realized that all these amazing things happen. And I think, how the hell did I do that? And how can I do it again? Which sounds like effort and struggle and control. Yeah, baby.
This goes back to what you just said. And I took notes when you said, you're right, I'm looking for the total solution. Don't. It's,
I mean, to that extent, business planning is a fallacy. Like, I'm not opposed to business planning and strategic plans, and
it's a good way to work things out in your head. But you're 100% right.
But you take that first step, but Joshua says, well, the problem with that kind of planning is that the steps that come, say, later in the year. I mean, this is the beginning of the year; it's the beginning of 2022, and Joshua says, well, that's all very well, but you're planning stuff 6 and 12 months out, and you're not even a vibrational match to whatever is going to be happening then. So plan all you want, but it's not really going to unfold that way. And to put it another way, you're probably limiting yourself, because you will be a vibrational match to something you can't even imagine right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why businesses pivot. People can say, I mean, there's all that stuff like, they say in battle or in boxing that, every plan, what is it? No plan survives the first skirmish with the enemy. Or is it Mike Tyson who said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth?
It's really true. but just listing all these miracles, right, and all these elements that have happened to me, like even how I came upon Gary. I had read the
Yeah.
book. I had read the book by Andrew
Yeah.
Knapp, How to Manifest the Million, How to Manifest $1 million you lost, right? Whatever it was, the greatest manifestation book on the planet. The last, I think the name of the book is The Last Manifestation Book You'll Ever Have to Read. So I watched a YouTube video where Andrew was interviewing Gary. And I'm like, and I liked what Gary was saying. And I'm like, oh, and I emailed Gary. That's how I got,
Wow.
I didn't plan on it. It just happened. I was reading books on how to manifest and get back that $1 million.
Yeah. A similar thing. Well, I mean, the same here actually, because I was doing a course at Los Angeles on how to create online courses. And, we've since gone on to create a lot for ourselves and others. And there was a woman on the course who was just another student. I'd never met her. I think she lives in Toronto or somewhere. Her name is Priya Kajuria. She's written this hilarious book called Bollywood PI. Anyway, she's a musician and she's a very interesting person. Anyway, so she published this LOA game book about, do these exercises. And because I was on her LinkedIn list, she just messaged everybody and said, hey, would you like to review my book on Goodreads for me, because some reason or other. So I had a look at the book and I said, yeah, sure. Yeah, happy to do that. And then I did it. And then I said, that's awesome. I really like your book. I bought it. And well, obviously since I reviewed it. And she said, oh, if you like that, then you might like this. And she introduced me to Abraham, right? This is maybe 2018. And then I went back to her a bit later in the year and said, that was amazing. She said, oh, well, if you liked Abraham, you might like this. And there was like Gary Temple Bodley and Joshua. And that was the same year. I said, oh yeah, I really do like that. Thank you so much. So that's just like, how random is that as a way to get there, and she just kind of generously shoveled out all this information to me.
I love that.
Yeah, so she introduced me to a New Zealand band, which I'd never heard of, who I now really like, because she's a musician. She said, oh, New Zealand, I really like this band called Alien Weaponry. I said, what's that? She said, it's a New Zealand band. Look at this video. And so I was booked to go to a concert of theirs, but the guitarist broke his hand that day, so it didn't happen. But I knew her t-shirt size, so I could buy some merch, right? I was going to buy her the Alien Weaponry t-shirt and post it to Canada as a way of saying thank you for bringing me to this amazing stuff. Anyway, a kind of somewhat relevant anecdote, but not that important. So back where you were.
No, I think it fits in perfectly. It is just acknowledging that every day these miracles are happening for us.
Yeah. So we see it, but why don't we? It doesn't fit our Western model of how we think things get done.
The truck backing up into our driveway and unloading the $10 million. That's what we think is going to happen.
Yeah.
That's the miracle we're all looking for. That's not the miracle.
Yeah. So we all imagine that it comes through hard work and planning and all that kind of stuff. But when I look at the reality of my life, speaking for my own truth, is that, well, none of the really good things in my life ever happened that way at all. None of them did. And the exit from the business where I picked up a pile of cash, that was just randomly out of the blue.
Yeah.
It was perfect. I really wanted to get out, but I didn't see that as an option. I was looking to reduce my hours and, maybe reduce my stock holding in the business, that kind of thing. How are you doing for time?
I actually have to go pick up my kid. That was my wife was just telling me.
Yeah, and that's what I figured. So that's why I thought I'd call it to a close here.
That was great, but that was really helpful. And I said, thank you so much for those emails and the texts you're sending, because they really are helping me get clarity. And through all of this, sometimes you tend to go down a path. And I think everything you've been sending me has helped right my thinking and help me get back on the path to really think through this the way that we're all looking to, from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so thank you. So keep that stuff coming. I'm absolutely loving it.
Well, it's amazing to me because I'm just dissecting and studying this material, and the process of doing that, to share it with you, is just incredibly enlightening. And the material is so dense and rich that you can't just listen to the podcast once and absorb it. It's even now, just reading it again now, even though I've dissected it a few times, like new layers of insight. Anyway, go and pick up your daughter. See you soon.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Jerry. Bye. Bye.